everyone, in this video a little bit of air fryer inspiration. Whether you've just bought an air fryer or you've had one for absolutely ages, we can all do with a little bit of inspiration about what we could be cooking for our families. So what I've done is over the last couple of weeks I filmed dishes that I've been cooking for my family here at home, and I will talk you through what was and wasn't a success. So coming up, I've got pies and puddings and vegetables, even a soup and a couple of viral air fryer videos which we tried out to see if they were any good. First up, we have a brilliant cheats recipe for chicken pies, which I was making for the first time last week, but will definitely be repeating. It's from Good Housekeeping, and I will link it in the description below. Use chicken thighs as the main meat in the dish, which I had in the freezer, and so I thawed out on my defrosting board. If you don't have one of these, by the way, they're pretty cheap, and they just use thermal conduction to speed up the defrosting time. Extremely useful to have in the kitchen. After you have defrosted the chicken and fried it in a pan, you then cook mushrooms. Now, last week, we've all done it. I had somehow managed to order 7 packs of mushrooms when I wanted 2 in my online order. So I was actively searching for anything that I could stick them in. After the mushrooms are cooked, you then put the chicken back in the pan with frozen peas, and you add the magic cheats ingredient, which is a tin of cream of mushroom soup. Now, the main reason I was cooking these pies, other than the fact we were hungry, was because I had ordered some pie dishes from Lakeland that someone had recommended online as being good for air fryers, and so I wanted to test them out. When they arrived, they were actually quite an odd size, not big enough for a main course and slightly too big for a pudding. So I ended up using these enamel dishes, which I've had for years, instead for these pies. But you will see those Lakeland pie dishes in a moment when I do a different dish. When the filling is complete, you plate up the ingredients. You can obviously do that into one big dish or individual pie dishes, as I did, and then you cover them with puff pastry. As you can see, this recipe makes 4 individual pies, so I froze 2 and cooked the other 2 in the air fryer. Now, something did go slightly wrong with this meal, despite the fact the pies looked delicious. Having boiled the potatoes, I then trusted my husband to mash them. Now, normally he's excellent at this job, and I have no idea what happened while my back was turned, but we ended up with very liquid mashed potatoes. The pie, however, was excellent. At lunchtime the next day, I wanted to try out a viral air fryer recipe I had seen, which is air fried Babybel. You may have seen this too. This actually turned out to be a really unsatisfying dish. To start with, the coating does not want to stick to the outside of the Babybel. When they're cooked, they're runny, but also kind of weirdly rubbery. And the thing that the viral videos don't show is that they also kind of explode out of the coating, so they don't look particularly good or taste particularly good. I think if I was going to cook cheese in the air fryer again, I'd probably stick with baked camembert. Another snack food I cooked last week was raspberry muffins. It's a pretty simple recipe using white chocolate chips and fresh raspberries mixed together in a batter. I cooked these in silicone moulds, and I used my 6-inch square baking dishes to hold the silicone moulds, partly for convenience and partly to stop them completely twisting out of shape. You may have seen in other videos that I generally don't recommend silicone liners in air fryers because it slows the cooking time down, but I do use silicone muffin cases occasionally for convenience and because they are quite small with a big surface area, so it's rather different from using those silicone liners for the drawers. Lunchtime the following day was an opportunity to try out another viral air fryer recipe, which really intrigued me because this time it was for soup made in the air fryer. There are lots of variations of this recipe, but I used half an onion, 500 grams of tomatoes, 3 peppers, a slug of balsamic vinegar, some lazy garlic, mixed herbs and salt and pepper. I saw a version of this which included Boursin cheese, but the best I could manage in my fridge was stealing a couple of cubes of feta from a pot of olives. Stick all of that into the drawer of an air fryer with the crisper plate removed, and then roast it for 15 minutes at 190, and then crank it up for the last 5 minutes to 200. The house smelt amazing while it was cooking, and afterwards you transfer the contents of the drawer to a blender, add about 100 ml of stock and blitz it. You end up with a very thick, very flavoursome soup, which was absolutely crying out for a toasted cheese sandwich to go with it, which is what my daughter made. And yes, you can make one of those in the air fryer too. Another new recipe I tried was Clementine Puddings, although I did do a cheats version of them. This seems to be a common theme with me, actually, because I didn't want to faff around zesting and juicing a clementine. Instead, I used a tin of mandarins and some orange essence, which I usually have on hand. But if you don't have the essence, I think you could just use some of the juice from the tin instead for the same effect. You start by putting a piece of mandarin in the bottom of the pudding moulds with some sugar, then make the batter. The recipe calls for clementine zest in the batter, but this is where I use the orange essence instead. Cover the pudding moulds with foil and place in the drawer of your air fryer to cook. Then you make the syrup to pour over the puddings using the juice from the tin, which happened to be exactly the right amount that they tell you need fresh from the clementine, and add some sugar. When the puddings are done, remove the foil, turn them out into dishes and pour the syrup over the top. They were absolutely delicious, and we will be making them again. Next, it was my daughter's birthday dinner, and I wanted to show you how I cooked corn on the cob in the air fryer. It's actually exactly the same way that I have been cooking on the barbecue for years. I put each half cob into tin foil, added a knob of butter and some salt and pepper, and then cooked them for 15 minutes at 160 on bake, and they were absolutely perfect. We served them with some breaded chicken, also cooked in the air fryer, but I've talked about that before, with some air fry potatoes and some salad. Worth mentioning that with all of those elements being cooked in the air fryer, you can just cook the corn on the cob first, leave it in the tin foil on the side while the other bits are cooking. Now, remember those pie dishes from Lakeland that were a bit of an odd size? I was determined to use them, so I thought I'd try making apple pies with them. I made pastry first, and then I created a filling using apple puree from a jar, which is something I always keep in the store cupboard, and then I added some chunks from the last of the apples which we had from our apple tree in our garden. But those pie dishes really are completely the wrong size. I didn't even have a cookie cutter that was the right size to cut out the pastry, so I had to improvise using a plate to cut out instead. And guess what I realised I hadn't done? I hadn't actually checked if the pie dishes fitted in the drawer of the air fryer. And although you can obviously get one in each drawer, they are slightly too big to fit two in, which is really frustrating. And this is kind of why I test them out for you, because you get these blind recommendations online and it's nice to know how it works in real life. However, the pies themselves were very tasty. One final air fryer experiment to show you, courtesy of my son, who found someone making candied watermelon on YouTube Shorts. You use chunks of the rind, which you cook on a low heat in a syrup on the hob. Then you dry them out a bit with kitchen paper and place them on baking paper in the air fryer and dehydrate for a few hours. Because this was an experiment, we only tried a small amount. Didn't know if it was going to be worth bothering with any more, but we were actually very pleasantly surprised by the results, which was sort of the texture of dried mango. So a little bit chewy, not completely dry and crisp, with sort of a good texture to it. So I hope that provided you with a little bit of inspiration. If you'd like to see more videos that help you choose and use your home appliances, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notifications. The next video I'm working on for this channel is trying to answer a big question that everyone's been asking me recently, which is, should they buy a Ninja, Cosori or Philips air fryer? So I'm doing a video where I'm going to talk you through the pros and cons of all three brands. That will be coming up on the channel. If you're subscribed, you'll see it pop up in your feed. Thanks very much for watching.